Hello and welcome back to another Learning Large Format video. This week I had only done one shoot and I completely forgot to record any footage of it whatsoever. So this video is mostly going to be me just talking, and there will be my images that I have taken here and there, but for the most part it will be me just talking and it will be quite a short video. However, I do have some things to talk about at the end of the video, so maybe that will drag it out just that slightest bit longer. Also, yes, I am still very ill. In fact, I am a lot worse than I was in my last video, so recording this is going to be a struggle. Anyway, let's just get right into it so I don't cough my lung up midway through a sentence. Like I said, I had only done one shoot this week. It was a bit out of the blue, I hadn't planned it and I was a little bit hesitant to do it. So basically, Jen was doing her dissertation part of the developmental portfolio and I came along to help out with a few things. We both never shoot in the studio, Jen even less so than me, so I thought I'd come along to help out as much as I can where help was needed. Jen's idea for the shoot was basically a fashion shoot based on the trends of the different decades. It was all the way from the 60s to the early 2000s and we had different models for each decade. One of those models is someone we know called Alice, and she's on a course and I was meant to take her portrait when I was taking Caitlin's back in the last video, but she had some dissertation stuff to do, so it never really got round to doing it. Previously, Alice had mentioned that I should get her portrait in the studio, but I was a bit apprehensive about that idea, so I didn't want to do any studio work for this project. But since we were both there and she does a lot of studio work herself, I thought I'd just ask her if she still wanted to do it. She said yes, and once Jen was done with her shoot, I asked Alice if she could help me set up the studio lighting since I have no idea what I'm doing. So she brought some lights over and began setting them up. I then realised that the light meter I had was actually broken, so I had to go back to the stores to get a replacement. When I came back to the studio, all the lighting was set up and Alice was in position. I had some help from one of the technicians there to sync my lens to the flash and I was ready to start shooting. So I set up my composition and took my first shot. I wanted the portrait to relate to her work in the studio, but the most I could do at the time was just give her a camera, so the photo is a little bit lackluster. However, the shot was pretty good. I managed to focus perfectly and the lighting was great. I then was deciding if I wanted to get a close-up portrait or another full body that was a little bit wider. This was so I could include some of the studio lights and just like the studio in general, so it could relate to her a little bit more. As I moved back, I realised that the studio lights and the rest of the stuff would just be in complete darkness, so it just didn't look very good. So that's when I moved in closer to get a headshot. I set up my shot and was about to take the photo, but that's when I had the idea to use some tilt like I did in my last photo of Jen. I shot my last photo of Jen at f/22, but I used some tilt and it creates a nice depth of field, so I thought I'd do something similar with this one. I was shooting at f11 and I was focusing quite close, so my image was going to be a little bit blurry already, but I decided to use some tilt so I could exaggerate that even more. So I tilted the lens and took the photo, and this is exactly how I was hoping it would turn out to be. Although the focus drop off does look that slightest bit unnatural, I do love how it turned out. Alice's face is ridiculously sharp and you can just see every detail of her face, yet her body is completely blurry. I was so right to use tilt on this because I feel like if I didn't, then it wouldn't look anywhere near as good. I definitely need to use tilt a lot more in my images and just mess around with more movements. Seeing these photos come out the developing machine at uni made me so happy. And once I was scanning them, I started to rethink my project. Even though I wanted to put my own spin on a yearbook and do environmental portraits of each person in my course, these photos have made me want to do a classic yearbook. Although I think I would change the background to a black background since I think that would just look a lot better. I prefer these photos to any other portraits I have taken on 4x5. The headshot photo in particular is the only photo that I truly think 4x5 brought something to the table that I couldn't have done without it. And as I was thinking about doing a classic yearbook, I then thought it would be a good idea to get a studio headshot of the person and an environmental portrait. But this would be so difficult to do in the time frame that I have that I just don't think I could do it. So now I'm thinking of doing something similar to these two photos. A close-up headshot and then a wider shot of the subject with an item of their choice so it relates to them a little bit more. I think this would be the best way to do it, and it may even improve my grade a little bit more since I'll be developing my skills in the studio, and after all, this is a developmental portfolio. Also, I done a shoot yesterday outside with the 4x5 and it made me want to shoot in the studio even more because the light was constantly changing and it was super windy. The weather and lighting is just too unpredictable to do this project properly and in time. I would just prefer to book a studio and get a few people in for their portraits after a lecture, since that would be so much easier and it would be really fun. So this project will most likely be switching to studio work, which actually makes me really excited. For quite a while I've been saying that I want to improve my knowledge in the studio and get some work that I really enjoy, and I think this is going to be a way to do that. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Sorry I didn't have any footage and it wasn't the most interesting. Be sure to check out my last video and be sure to check out the rest of these videos in my Learning Large Format playlist. I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.